So my worst fear came true as a chef and a food content creator. Yes, I developed gestational diabetes when I became pregnant with my second child at 40. And I was completely surprised about it because I didn't have it with my first pregnancy. And I wish I could say that I picked myself up by my bootstraps and was inspired to be creative and to share and help others. Nope, that wasn't me. Girl, that wasn't my story. It made me lose motivation to post and share anything, and I watched our YouTube channel slowly die before my very eyes. But I do have some practical tips on what you could possibly eat realistically when you're not feeling it like I was, as well as the pros to why I'm actually thankful I had gestational diabetes in the end. So make sure you watch till the end. This journey was almost too much for me to bear. If you watched this video, then you would have seen that I talked about dealing with other health problems already, such as hypertension, extreme nausea, and Bell's palsy. I actually filmed myself 2 years ago while I was pregnant and actually dealing with this. It just got lost in the archives, but I dug it out for you because misery loves company. So if you are like me and you're struggling through this gestational diabetes journey, or you're just curious about it, then make sure that you watch. So here's my story shared 2 years ago. One of my biggest fears that I had during pregnancy was developing gestational diabetes. That seems like a little bit dramatic, but I just already knew a few friends who had it, and it seemed like it was pure torture. As a foodie, as a chef, I was like, that to me sounds like the worst thing that could possibly happen, especially because I was already dealing with such immense nausea. So I was already limited in what I could possibly eat or what I could choke down or keep down. And if I had to get rid of my carbs and my soft foods and all those things like the white sugars, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do. But that's exactly what happened to me, and I can't believe it was added on to my already long list of problems I was experiencing already during my pregnancy. Gestational diabetes is basically how your cells are affected and use up sugar in your body. And sometimes you can't manage it. You don't produce enough insulin. And so it's kind of similar to the way regular diabetes works, but it does form while you're pregnant. And then most of the cases, it leaves your body when you're done being pregnant, and it comes out with the placenta, which is super weird to me. And I didn't think that I would have it because I didn't have it with Lincoln in my first pregnancy. I'm also not huge on sweets in general. I wasn't eating sweets really at all up to this point. I wasn't craving anything. But I will say I was eating breads, rice, pasta, that kind of stuff. But sometimes it just happens. It's genetic, or there could be an underlying problem for why you can't regulate the sugar. Most of the times people get tested for gestational diabetes around the 24 to 28 week mark. But for me, unfairly, I had to get measured way earlier. And I don't remember when exactly, but it was definitely at the beginning of my second trimester. It's because, they either detect sugar in your blood or your urine when you're always taking these samples. And they just wanted to make sure because I had all these other problems already. So if you have gestational diabetes, the reason it's dangerous is because your baby has a chance of getting too big too quickly inside of you because you just can't regulate that sugar. So you'll either deliver early or have complications. Also, your baby could be prone to developing diabetes in the future themselves because it's just the way that they're regulating the sugar that you're giving them. So I was like, whoa, this is so crazy. So I had to take it seriously. What they do is they make you take this glucose drink, which is this very sweet, sugary, tang-like substance. It's called the 1 hour test, where you take it and then you go to the doctors and they draw your blood about an hour after you take it. So leading up to this test, I was very paranoid. So I started really tapering down my carb intake. I think I went to the extreme and I was really trying to cheat the system and eat no sugar whatsoever. But it doesn't help, especially for the 1 hour test. Unless I was doing this already as a lifestyle and I was doing this for months, there's no way this could have helped at all. They said either you have it or you don't. It's just what it is. So they tested my blood sugar, and I was just over by 2 points or 3 points, something really, really small. So I got really frustrated and sad because after that you do a 3 hour test. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because that's going to take up so much of your time. Plus you have to take 4 blood tests in all. So you take a fasting test, you drink the sugary drink, and then you get tested every hour. And I've mentioned this before, but I'm a very hard draw. So it's very traumatic for me every time I have to get a blood test because no matter where I go, even when I get it at the lab, sometimes the phlebotomist can't get it in one poke. Like they have to call another phlebotomist, so that I'm getting poked 2 or 3 times to get one blood sample. As a result, my arms are always bruised up and then they hurt for days on end. It's hard to even like bend them. And so I was really scared about that. I was like praying about it. My friends were praying for me. But luckily, each of the blood tests went by smoothly and was done with one poke. And they did hurt because it starts getting kind of raw. Like they kind of switch your arms, but it's like in the same spots. And it's like all within 3 hours. Can't eat, can't really move around too much either. So then a few days later, like everything's done by app these days. So I looked at my app and I was so crestfallen. I was like, immediately just started crying. You could clearly see that my levels were higher than they should be for each test. So I was really sad. I started crying because to me, I was like, this is the last thing I need. This is just one more thing added to, like at this point, I was already eating so many prescription medicines. I had to already measure my blood pressure. And then the thought of having to now like prick my fingers every day, and I'm so scared of needles and I have to watch what I eat and I'm so nauseous. It just felt very daunting. But that very same day, a doctor that specializes in the gestational diabetes at the hospital or at my practice at the time, he called and he actually put me at ease. So it was really good to have someone who had a good bedside manner, because he was like cracking jokes. He was calming me down. He's saying, it's not a big deal. It'll probably go away. And your levels weren't that bad. Like in other practices, you would have passed actually. I'm like, oh, great, you know. But in this one, they were a little more conservative with my numbers. So he said that I have to go see a dietitian/nutritionist for gestational diabetes. There was like little pieces of fake food out on her desk and they showed portion sizes of everything. And it just shows that like we all in general eat way too much sugar or too many carbs per meal. It made me kind of sad, but at the same time, she reassured me that I could eat more than I thought. When I was hearing rumors from other friends, it's like they couldn't even eat a piece of fruit anymore. You can eat more than you think. Like yes, you can eat fruit, you can eat smoothies, you can eat rice as long as it's brown rice. And like if you do eat things with sugars in it, you just have to be smarter about it. So I got this like whole list of can and cannot eat to try to monitor how many grams of carbs I eat, to start looking at labels. And if there doesn't have a label, then like this many ounces equals this many grams of carbs. And you just kind of have to balance everything out with a protein. No white sugars. So no white flours, no white rice, no white pastas or noodles. I had to immediately switch over to brown rice and maybe wheat pasta, but even then there's still high sugars in those. So even wheat bread, you have to be careful. So you just got to cut down your portion sizes and eat more often, basically. And so she would say you have to make sure you eat your 3 meals, but then also like 3 snacks a day, because when you balance out by eating like snacks throughout the day, then your blood sugar doesn't have a chance to really spike or go down too low too quickly. I was really nervous about getting the blood poking stuff. I had to go and get a prescription right away, pick it up at the pharmacy. And even that's like a whole other thing. They were trying to charge me like $600 for the whole thing. The machine that reads it, the strips to test the blood, and also the lancets, which were like the little needles that go inside the pokey thing. Eventually I had to call my OB and get it through another OB that was under my insurance so that it was free. But I started getting freaked out because they're like, if it doesn't get covered, like if you run out of strips and it doesn't get covered, then you're gonna have to pay out of pocket, and that's like $400. So she taught me how to do it in the office, but I don't know why I'm such a hard draw with blood tests and this, but like no matter what she was telling me, she's like, you gotta milk your fingers, make sure they're very warm, make sure that you use like these 3 fingers and not your pointer or your thumb because they're the most painful. So you have like 6 fingers to choose from a day, but it's 4 times a day. So you're gonna go through all your fingers like multiple times, you know, in a week. And she's like, here, you do your first poke. And I was like trembling, like I couldn't like poke myself, but I finally did it. But then of course what happens? No blood comes out. So I'm like, oh great. So then she had to poke it like 2 more times in 2 different fingers to finally get a drop of blood big enough that she could squeeze it and put on the strip. And I read it. And then by that time, my blood sugar was reading high, because apparently if you have anxiety or you're nervous when you're doing it, it raises the sugar in your blood. So you're supposed to like be relaxed and chill and like zen when you do it. And I'm like, this is not gonna happen. And it didn't. She tells me that I have to start poking myself 4 times a day, every day until I'm done with pregnancy, and then maybe even like 6 months after, just to make sure that it really is gone. And I was like, this is too much to keep track of. Like I have to take my blood pressure, I have to eat my medicines at different times, and some of them have to be on opposite times of each other. So I have to make sure I do the right ones, the right times. and I had to poke myself 4 times a day. I'm like, this is a full-time job. So I woke up in the morning, I try to be zen, I drink a ton of water, and then again, I'm trying to poke myself, and I kid you not, I had to poke myself 4 times and waste 3 strips by the time I got enough blood. And I started crying. I started just like bawling because I was like, I literally cannot do this for the whole pregnancy. I don't know what's going on. I started looking up tips. I started watching YouTube videos of other people, other diabetics who were like doing it very easily because they do this their whole lives. And I was like, what is going on with me? And I was like, shaking my hands down and trying to get the blood in there, washing it under warm water, doing all the tips, and I still couldn't get it. I was such a nervous wreck that I was like, I can't go through this. I'm wasting so many strips. I'm poking myself, but they're getting so raw. It was starting to hurt because with the little pokey needle thing and the lancets, you can set the tension. You can set it how strong you want it. So if it's too little, then it's gonna like hurt less, but it won't poke out enough blood. And if it's too strong, then it's gonna be like hurting and painful and like kind of ringing in your finger, like the residual pain. You don't wanna do it again. So I'm like, oh my gosh, so you gotta find like trial and error, like what's the right tension for you. Finally, luckily I had a friend, Ellen, who's a nurse, and she ended up like listening to me, and she's like, I'm coming over. So I was like, thank you, Jesus. Like she literally came over in the middle of the day, left her kids, everything, and she helped me poke my blood and like really giving me tips on how to milk my finger. And then I realized through her that I have to make sure that I have enough blood in order for it to like fill the strip enough so that it tests right. Because every time I would put the strip in, and even though the blood's going in, it would read error. And whenever I saw that error, I would just want to shut down and cry because I'm like, I can't believe this. And then the second time I had to do it that day, she was home and she told me to FaceTime her. By nighttime, I was able to do it again, but again, it took me 2 pokes. So then I started averaging like that. Like in the mornings, especially when I first woke up, I had just had a really hard time getting it in 1 poke, and this was going on for a while. But then towards the ends of the day, like I would get it in 1 poke. So I started getting like bolder, and it got easier, and I started feeling less stressed. And honestly, for some reason, it just took me like weeks to learn. And I had to take this machine, this darn thing around with me everywhere I went. For me, I had to test it 2 hours after my first bite of food. So if I was about to sit down and eat lunch, I would have to take my first bite of food, set my timer for 2 hours, and then wait 2 hours for it to go off, and then I would have to poke myself no matter where I was. And then I had to keep a log of it. So I had it all written on this like paper log that I did because they wanted to see all the results plus my blood pressure every doctor's visit. If I was in the car and we're on the road driving, I'd have to be like in the passenger seat doing it while we're still driving or at a red light. If I was at a restaurant, I'd have to bust it out and I'd feel like really self-conscious or feeling like it's unsanitary. Sometimes I'd go into the bathroom to do it. Lincoln started to be very fascinated by it. He didn't want to see me have blood. So he'd be like, did you poke your blood? And like, those kind of things. And even my friends would start to monitor me. They'd be like, did you set your timer? Did you poke your blood? Or they're like, Julie, set your timer. And like, it just became this thing. So yeah, it was very all consuming. And those of you who are diabetic normally, I feel for you. Oh, something I forgot to mention is when I went to the nutritionist, the cool thing is that she had a list of even Asian ingredients and like regular Asian ingredients that I would normally use. There was even like gochujang, doenjang on there, oyster sauce, sriracha, hoisin sauce, like those kinds of things were listed on there, and like how much a tablespoon of that would be, because I do cook a lot of Asian or Asian fusion food, and I was thankful that at least I kind of knew that I could still eat these ingredients, even if there was some sugar in them, because a lot of Asian ingredients tend to have this kind of sweet and salty element to it. It's just a matter of like being smarter about your choices. You have to eat a lot more kind of like a keto diet. So then I started researching keto diets so I would get some ideas. Unfortunately, I didn't get to take a lot of pictures or video clips of like my foods that I ate during this time because honestly, I was just really struggling. You would think that I'd be good at this because I'm a chef, but no, I was completely struggling because I was so nauseous all the way up until like nearly like 30 weeks of pregnancy. I would throw up every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes violently. Sometimes I'd have to even cook separate foods for Lincoln and Joe because Lincoln's not going to eat my weird brown rice quinoa concoction or eat like salads all day. I got so sick of salads. Even when I went out to restaurants, I realized how unfriendly it is for people who are on these diets, like have dietary needs. I just felt like there weren't many options. So a lot of times, even Asian restaurants, you would think they would have like brown rice or any other kind of rice option, but they wouldn't. So I started like having a habit of, if I knew where I was going for a restaurant socially, I would just bring my own little thing, like a container of cooked brown rice at home and bring it to the restaurant. And some of the snacks that I ate were literally the same things over and over again. Kind bars that had little sugar, string cheese, nuts, some dried fruits like trail mix type of stuff, because you can get away with a little bit of that, or some berries. Sometimes I eat boiled egg. Sometimes I eat just some random pieces of deli meat. And when you're pregnant, you're not really supposed to eat like uncooked deli meat, but I still did because I was like, I have limited choices to begin with. I would have a rotisserie chicken in the refrigerator and just like cut off chunks of it and eat that as a snack, or eat that like right before bed. And when I talked to the doctors, they were like, yeah, every case is like very different. And you don't know why something's happened or why your blood sugar is spiking at a certain time and then goes down. So I noticed that if I ate like a piece of chicken, like no seasoning or anything, or just a piece of protein right before I went to sleep, the next morning my sugars were lower. So like whenever I was craving sweets, I could drink like a Coke Zero or a Diet Coke, or even sugar-free desserts if I really wanted to. And even desserts like cake or cupcake or ice cream, like you can take like a bite, like you can take like a square inch bite, which is like so nothing, but I would do that sometimes. And then what I discovered is that over time, I started to crave sugars less, and like sugary foods less in general. Even a piece of fruit tastes so sweet to me. Like grapes are really high in sugar. I would eat them sparingly. And if I did, it tasted like seriously nature's candy, seriously like dessert. Even now, I feel like I can get away without really craving sugars or desserts. But socially, you feel kind of like sad or left out, because if it's like birthdays, birthday parties, you're hanging out with your family, like they would just eat ice cream on their own. I would just sit there and stare because there was no options for me. There was like no sugar-free option. So I just watched them eat dessert. I'd watch people eat dessert at restaurants. I'd go to like little parties and not eat any cakes. And like when you're pregnant, you're already limited as it is, right? You can't eat sushi, you can't eat deli meat, you can't eat this or that. And then like now I'm limited even more. So that's kind of the reason why I didn't feel motivated to do that many cooking shows or cooking content on this channel. Not only was I so nauseous that I couldn't even stand a side of food, but I just didn't feel motivated or energized to make recipes like this. So if I did make some stuff, I got by. I just didn't really enjoy it. When I was like super at my height of nausea, my friends Grace and Ellen came by and cooked for me. They like did meal prep for me because they knew I just couldn't handle it. So they decided to make me like big batches of soups, very keto friendly, low carb friendly. One was like a chickpea stew with a bunch of vegetables and turkey sausage, and the other one was a ground turkey and kale soup, and another one was like a quinoa bake that had like mozzarella and a little bit of tomato sauce or something, and all of it was good and like really helped me survive. So I ended up just eating a ton of salads, just like throw stuff together, making my own dressing so I can watch how I dress it, or not dressed at all. A lot of soups. So that made me eat a lot more chickpeas and beans, kale, ground turkey. For the most part, it was just like riffraff. So just like whatever I can grab that seemed okay. I don't remember like any kind of go-to dish that I made that I really enjoyed. That's when I grew an aversion to eggs too, because I had to eat eggs in the morning because like what else can I eat? I can't eat cereal. Even oatmeal is too carb heavy. So I would eat sometimes avocado toast, turkey bacon, like peanut butter with a fruit. And it was like that on rotation all the time. Maybe sometimes like those sous vide egg bites that are like frozen. Yeah, lunches again were like soups and salads. Maybe like low carb tortilla wrap, like with deli meat. The only thing that I enjoyed that I kind of got away with doing was making my kale smoothies, like super green smoothies. Though there were a lot of cons, like I mentioned, there were some pros too for this. So one of the things that I feel like really helped me was that I maintained a healthy weight. I'm 40 and I was afraid of being pregnant at 40 because I'm like, this is gonna be hard for me. What if I gain a ton of weight? What if I can't bounce back? What if I feel like very heavy and unhealthy? But because of the diet, I most of the time felt very light, had a lot of energy because you're not eating these like sugars and heavy carb things. Just having the energy to just kind of still take care of Lincoln and do work is, I think, a large part of the diet. I'm also much more of a mindful eater. So I'm kind of thinking about like, do I need to eat this or can I eat something else instead? I eat more well-balanced, and I'm hoping that I can keep this up for the most part, even after the diet. I also feel like treats are more like treats. Like when you have it, you're supposed to feel like, oh my gosh, this is so great, what a treat. And for a while, because I was always drinking like, sugary drinks at Starbucks, or, just eating mindlessly like fruits whenever I wanted to, or desserts whenever I wanted to every night, like it didn't feel like such a treat. But now if I happen to eat a little bit of it, it feels like so great, like a reward. I'm also satisfied with less, like a little goes a long way, because like you can still have like a bite or two of things sometimes, and I feel like that's enough for me. And obviously, most of all, I'm really thankful that baby is healthy. No matter what I was going through, the baby was always measuring a good size, again, because she wasn't getting too big too fast. So I just feel really thankful that I was able to take care of this baby through like my diet and everything like that. And a couple of things to monitor your gestational diabetes is to be more active. So that kind of helps me to be mindful. Like I actually don't like sit there and work out like I probably should, but I'll take walks, or I'll take the long way, or I'll park further away, or I'll take the stairs. So if I especially ate something that was a little bit more carb heavy, like I had noodles or pasta, then I will intentionally take a walk or move around or do errands or chores. And yeah, I just feel better about myself being 40 and pregnant, because I thought I would feel like a schlumpy potato, but I actually feel really great, even maybe better than I did when I was pregnant with Lincoln at 35. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like a blessing. And that's what my friend said too, that like maybe this is kind of like a blessing of the way God was watching out for me in advance so that I wouldn't, turn into all those things I was fearful of. I'm also glad that I didn't have to go on insulin, because that was another reason that I was crying when I first found out, because I knew that a lot of people with gestational diabetes have to go on insulin. So then you have to give yourself a shot like in your stomach or your thigh, like every day. But as my numbers were coming back every day and I was doing a good job, they did have to raise my medicine, which is metformin, like once. And I had to take it twice a day. So I take 1 pill in the morning, 2 pills at night. After that one raise of a dose, it was being way more monitored. And then I had a better hang of like, just what to eat, when to eat it, how often, and how to exercise and move around more. And so that really helped monitor. So I'm lucky and I'm thankful to say I never had to go on insulin. If you develop gestational diabetes, don't be as scared or as nervous as me. Even poking your blood, like it's not as bad. For some reason, I just couldn't get the hang of it before, but I have it now and it's not as bad and it's pretty quick and it's not as painful anymore too. And it does make you feel like you are healthier overall, and you know that you're taking good care of yourself and the baby, which would also help you in postpartum with recovery. Also make sure that you move around more, because you can really like cheat the system by just moving around more after like a big meal. And with my doctor, he's like, you have to watch what you eat for 90% of the time. But if you have that one meal that you want to go out with your friends, like just eat the meal, For me, I have high blood pressure. He's like, what's worse, like feeling stressed out all the time and then your blood pressure going up, or having one cheat meal every now and then? I was able to kind of just do that and be free. I'm not like some professional or anything like that, but that's kind of how I did it and survived my gestational diabetes. See, I told you I had some positive things to say, and I also shared whatever tips I could muster. After I gave birth, I literally did come out with the placenta, and I was like diagnosed with no gestational diabetes. But just for a while, I did have to poke my blood still. And then I think a few months later, I was able to take another glucose test and I passed it. And that's how they knew for sure that I didn't have it anymore. So then I was able to just eat what I wanted. And then I went like off the deep end, and I just like started eating like all the carbs, all the things. And at first I didn't. I was just kind of like, oh, you know what? I have this good habit going, so let me just continue to eat a little bit better. But then after a while, especially postpartum, you're like so tired, you're sleep deprived, you're just eating what you can. People are giving you food from meal trains, they're giving you gift cards, they're dropping off sweets. But these days, I am able to be more conscious about what I cook and how we eat. And so in a way, Joe and I are kind of going back to my gestational diabetes diet now. Not really, like we're just eating maybe a little bit more like Atkins or keto friendly. Not even that full intentional. Like we ate instant ramen the other day. Honestly, it is something that is good to practice. I know that I did it and I know we can do it again. I know there's a chance that I could develop diabetes after having gestational diabetes. So I'm trying to like taper off and calm down and simmer down now. And even if I didn't share too much of my gestational diabetes diet or the recipes then, I feel like as I continue on with my health journey, I could probably share more of those recipes now. Like I know I'm doing these vlogs and stuff, but the plan is to get back into the recipe videos. And so maybe it'll be a little bit more like health conscious recipes or health forward. Let's revive this channel together. Can't do it without you. Make sure that you also watch my upcoming video of my self-care video coming up next. It's a lot of practical but realistic things that I'm doing as a busy mom, as a tired mom, for self-care because it's important. And remember to be kind to yourself. I'll see you next time.